In Path of Exile, the Summon Skeleton ability allows you to summon skeleton warriors who will fight your enemies with melee attacks. The unique jewel Dead Reckoning allows you to summon skeleton mages instead, which will fight your enemies with elemental spell projectiles and do not only make for some beautiful screen spam but also for a fairly cheap and efficient build. Hi guys, Catmaster here. Welcome to another video. Today I want to show off my skeleton summoner that is using mage skeletons predominantly, that I put together in this small little private league. And before we go into the details of how the build works and what I was able to accomplish so far, I want to quickly go and do a red map tier 11 Veritania with these rolls that I chiseled, transmute, alt crafted, and then regaled because I only wanted 3 mods on it. Because you know, with the Conquerors, there's a lot of mods that you don't really want to run on a Conqueror, especially in a narrow little arena. And yeah. But before we go into this, quick disclaimer, this is not a build guide. This is a build that I threw together in an almost solo self-found environment in a very small private league. Obviously, if I had the plethora of choices available that you have in Trade League, I would make a lot of different choices, and if I wasn't playing hardcore, I would definitely do a lot more damage, but I obviously prioritize survivability over damage, because, you know, the longer you're able to stick in, you're gonna kill eventually, even with Z DPS. But I just like to make these rant videos where I talk about 1-2 core mechanics of a build and just show off how it functions, rather than making like a full start to end comprehensive guide. I will make comprehensive guides in the future, but I just can't have every build video that I make be one that I have to work 8 to 20 hours for in order to get all the facts straight and stuff. So I'm gonna be cherry picking. If you have any questions about the build at all, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, let's go in. So Skeleton Summoner, right? You have summon skeletons as a skill in Path of Exile, and per default they summon skeleton warriors. Now, in this build, we're using skeletal mages, which use spells. Interestingly, there are 3 different types of skeletal mages for each element, right? They use elemental projectile spells. So I'm also able to support them with projectile stuff. And my initial idea why I wanted to make a summoner build was because summoners in Path of Exile are incredible powerhouses in terms of offense and defense. And while not the fastest at clearing, they can be incredibly good at mostly, like, their predominant domain is blighted maps, but they're also really good for bossing or really good general characters, league starters and stuff. They thrive in difficult environments because you could just throw out your minions and, you know, wait around the corner and let everything die to whatever your minions do, which is really cool. So we're going to do this blight here. You can see I got annoyance for Scout Tower range and Scout Tower damage, which is more or less the meta for Blight in this time, but I'm sure you can do other ones. That's all great. And as you can see, I got up to 11 skeleton mages. They get the buff from the carrion golem, so they also get some flat fizz on top of their elemental damage. And we're using 3 Spectres. The Spectres provide charges for my skeletons. Oh, this one's going through. Gotta make sure to kick out the Val summon skeletons there. And as you can see, this is quickly getting out of hand, but the skeletons spamming the screen. Oh, I'm not in full screen. Let's go full screen, because full screen performance is slightly better than windowed full screen, at least for me. I don't know, how is it for you? Let me know in the comments down below, because I'm curious. A lot of people tell me that windowed full screen is much better for them than regular full screen. Some people couldn't play full screen because they like to alt-tab all the time. I'd love to play full screen, windowed full screen, because I like to alt-tab all the time, but the performance is just significantly worse with regular full screen. So, with windowed full screen than with regular full screen, so I can't really. But yeah, as you can see, not the fastest clearer, especially proc shields slow me down quite a bit, because obviously, whether I'm able to damage the monsters or not is based on the fact whether the minions are inside the proc shield. So if they for some reason walk out or the monster walks away or something like that, it's complicated with proc shields. I don't like proc shields. But for the rest of it, you can see it's pretty smooth. Using Vigilant Strike in order to get Fortify for my own character. I'm using Enduring Cry in order to generate endurance charges, which are obviously very, very good, not only for their physical reduction benefits and well, the Ellie resist I don't really care about, I'm weakness capped, but they're great because I have a cast when damage taking Immortal Call, and obviously Immortal Call gives you a great reduction to incoming elemental damage and physical damage hits, and the duration is greatly extended by expending endurance charges, so you kind of want to always have these endurance charges up. And as you can see, it's pretty decent. Pretty decent. Like, not the best build, but for sure. Oh, DD box, careful. But for what I put into it so far, I think I'm very happy, and I can see this scale very well into the end game that we're looking forward to play. Like some boss kills, Shaper, Elder, maybe a Maven. Definitely some of the Maven 5, 6, 10 ways, something, right? And yeah. The worst part about the build is the screen clutter. Like, a lot of times you won't know what is going on, as you can see. And it's really hard to still be aware of what the danger is. But at the same time, most of the time you don't need to be aware what the danger is, because your minions taunt, blind, hinder, and they do everything, right? And pretty much on a budget. Like, there's very little here that you really need in order to have this be good. I also completely forgot, I got weapon swap to Sinvictus Metal. Sinvictus Metal gives me Rampage, so I like to do that for mapping, just to get the Rampage buff, but that would obviously distort the image that you have of a low investment version of this build, so I didn't do that for the map. So now Veritania here. Important to note is I'm ailment immune, right? I managed to get Ignite, Chill, and Freeze and Shock avoidance to 100% via crafts on my gear. Oh, I forgot to curse her. I'm gonna wait until she's out of the arena for a moment here. But obviously for freeze immunity, not depending on your flask, that's pretty huge, right? Okay, now we're gonna go full ham on her. Important to note also is that the skeletons, when they're just summoned, when they've just been summoned, they're immune to damage. Wait, where is she? Wow, she's never been so far in the fog for me. But yeah, as you can see, pretty much like no contact boss fight was very easy. Sure, other builds do it much faster, but we're also on a very low level of gear. So I'm using a super scrub scepter that only has trigger, right? Trigger socketed spell when you use a skill with a 4-second cooldown. We're using Tempest Shield, Desecrate, and Bone Offering, mainly to cap ourselves off on block during the effect of Rumi's Concoction. This, super cheap, like in Trade League, this wouldn't cost you anything to buy. We're using a Sinner Tricorn, which does have the Syndicate mod for +1 skeletons, and it comes with +2 minion gems, and it had a free suffix so I could craft Avoid Elemental Ailments. It also had a free prefix for a while I had life before I got the Ailment Avoidance, but I always value that Ailment Avoidance a lot higher because it frees up flask slot, right? You don't need freeze immunity, you don't need shock immunity on your flasks. I get to run poison immune, I get to run an adrenaline flask. That's really nice, but just to show you, this is not a special helmet. The most special helmet thing about this helmet is the increased effect of the buff granted by your carrion golems. Now, carrion golems give flat physical damage to other minions, right? At level 18, at level 20, because it's a +2 from global modifiers from Necromancer. It's 27 to 41, and obviously with 150% increased effect, This is something close to like 60 to 100 flat fizz, so that's pretty decent for the skeletons. Also taking into account that skeletons gain 50% more added damage, right? They have 150% added damage effectiveness on them versus other minions. I have a amulet that's pretty worthless with +1 skeletons. That's basically the only good mod on here. I rolled this with the Fear Essence for the minion movement speed, which is not super crucial in this build because the minions that I use mostly use ranged attacks, so the movement speed is not much of a limiting factor. With melee minions it's much more of a thing, but yeah, basically just attributes, skeletons, and a life craft on this amulet. I'm looking to replace this, but Ravenous Horde Anoint costs 2 opalescent oils, and the new amulet that I want to wear does require that anoint as well, and it requires a tainted oil because it's going to be corrupted. I'm using a shield. This is probably the best piece of gear in the entire build, right? This is a Shaper shield that I crafted with pristine fossils in order to get the mod Off Shaping that gives you up to 5% recovery of life when you block, which is really, really good. We're block capped on attacks while we have roomies up, so we're 75 attack block and I think 57 spell block currently. Working on getting a little bit more spell block into the build, but this is what we're working with right now. I was also thinking I could maybe exalt this shield and hope for the hybrid mod where you get increased armor and additional flat chance to block, but that's really risky. It's only like a 5% chance that I hit one of the 2 tiers of the mod, so I haven't been doing that yet because it's like a 1 in 20 and I only have a handful of exalts. But I'm using this chest piece, which I got from Heist. This was a 6-link Necromancer Silk base from Heist that came with the life modifiers, have 8% increased effect, and I just used an Essence on there in order to get tier 2 life. Essence of Greed, that is, and I was lucky enough to hit 2 decent resistances and 3 prefix. So at first I crafted increased life and mana on this, and now I got the Ailment Immunity or Avoidance, which is also a prefix on chest pieces, while it is a suffix on helmet and gloves. And also these are unlocked in maps, while this is a Syndicate Unveiled mod that you need to unlock. I'm gonna go over the rings last. This is a synthesized base that gives me 0.5% of life regen for the minions. I rolled this, I mean, you can see this is a pretty poor pair of gloves. 61 life, 38 fire res, and that's basically it, right? I could re-roll these and probably hit a better pair of gloves in like 5 attempts or so. I just haven't yet. I'm not entirely sure I want to keep using this. I don't think I need the 0.5% of life regen, but it's nice to know that my minions are not gonna degen down when they're standing on desecrated ground or something, right? Or burning ground. I rolled this belt just to have good life and chaos resist, nothing much else there. And, you know, Stitch and Vice, so you get more than just a regular belt implicit, but you get to socket a jewel. Jewels are really powerful in minion builds. As you can see on this Abyss jewel, for example, I have 7% chance to taunt on hit with attacks for my minions, and seeing that my minions attack quite a lot, not the Skelly Mages, to be completely fair, the Skelly Mages are using spells, so they don't count as hits with attacks, but the Chaos Carrion Golem attacks, my monkeys here attack, so on any like meaningfully big enemy on boss fights, they will proc that 7% chance to taunt on hit quite a lot. And if you don't know, taunted enemies deal 10% less damage to everything that is not the source of the taunt. So unless I'm overriding the taunt with my Enduring Cry, even if they hit me while not targeting me because they're targeting whatever they're taunted by, then they will deal less damage. So that's a win-win, right? And also 7% chance to hinder enemies on hit with spells, which reduces their movement speed by 30%. Really good. Flat chaos and some flat life. The 1% penetration corrupt implicit is a waste, but you know, just an idea of how good a jewel can be. It can obviously be much better. You can get much better life, you can get higher values. These are like tier 3, so not huge. The boots are the latest addition to the build, and this is also the reason why I got 100% ailment avoidance, because I wouldn't have been able to get that just between the crafts on the chest piece, the helmet, and the gloves, but I was able to get a base of Shaper boots. I think I got that in a Blighted map or somewhere, and then I just rolled this, and I was lucky enough to hit both ailment avoidance tier 2, which rolls up to 30%, and I got 30% move speed. Now, it was a little bit unlucky because one prefix, there was no free prefix, there was one hybrid prefix, and so I used an Orb of Annulment, and I was hoping to either annul the mana or the hybrid, and I annulled the hybrid, and then I crafted life and I called it a day. Now what we can still do is we can bring these into Ashlyn. When we do Katarina, we can bring these into Ashlyn rank 4 and add a Veiled mod. For that we'd need to remove the life, and then we'd add a Veiled mod, and then we check by pressing advanced mod descriptions, and then you can see before you even pop it into the unveiling window with June, you can see whether it is a prefix or a suffix, and if it would be a suffix, I would unveil it. If it was a prefix, I would remove the crafted mod, because before you unveil the veiled mods, they still count as a crafted mod, so I'd still be able to take it off. And then craft life afterwards, because you really want life. But between the boots, which have 28% chance to avoid ailments, and the 26% here, the 22% here, and the 25% here, we're at 101% ignite, chill, freeze, and shock avoidance. There's different ways how you can get that, right? You can also anoint crystal skin for 15% chance to avoid LE ailments. There is thick skin has avoid elemental ailments. You can get avoidance to single elemental ailments on Abyss Jewels nowadays, right? Not on this one, but I can show you in my stash. I have quite a bunch of Abyss Jewels that have single avoidances, pretty good ones, mind you. Like here, this one has life and 20% chance to avoid being chilled and frozen, which is the max roll within the tier 1. So this is really good. And if you just get 3 Abyss Jewels, like one with freeze and chill, one with ignite, and one with shock, that can go a long way to helping you towards that 100%. It frees up some pressure. You don't need to get perfect rolls on the crafts, which can be very expensive, because you know how Path of Exile works. You know, you craft like 500 times and you hit 21, 22, 23, 21, 22, 23, and never the 25. But it is what it is. Eventually you'll get it. And most recently I was also able to run Uberlab to get the 2% regen enchant here. I'm not sure whether that's the best enchant, but it's a pretty good one. I think that's the best for a summoner, because I don't benefit from the leech enchant, and I don't benefit from any of the flat damage ones. Maybe stun avoidance, but ultimately I would want to go stun immune on this build anyway, like either via unwavering stance in the tree or something else. Yeah, good point. Now chat is being a good wingman and telling me that you can use Harvest for the avoid implicits. That's also a very good point. You can get up to, like, you can get 10% chance to avoid an ailment implicit on jewels, on Abyss Jewels, on regular jewels, right, with Harvest. This is really, really good. Make sure you get the chance to avoid, not the reduced effect, because even though, like here, reduced ignite duration, even though there is reduced effect of shock and stuff like that, and you could theoretically also stack reduced effect to shock to 100%. That does not make you immune to shock, because certain things in the game have a fixed effect of shock, so the reduction won't work on them. But 100% avoidance works even on something like shock ground. 100% avoidance makes you not shocked. So you can roll shock ground on your maps, you can roll chilled ground, and it's 100% avoided. Burning ground, on the other hand, will still degen me, because burning is not ignite. Like, you're not ignited when you're burning necessarily. Like, ignites are burning damage, but I digress. This is like a whole different topic for a different video. I'm quickly gonna go over my tree and then gonna go over my summon, and then we're gonna round the video off, because I don't want to make it too long, but it's probably gonna be a 20-minute video, because it's a fairly complex build, and even talking very fast, I need to cover a lot of ground. So we're starting at the Witch, we're going out, we're grabbing Death Attunement for +1 Spectres, +1 Skeletons. Eventually I might actually drop this, especially if I can anoint this, but my anoint for now is Ravenous Horde. In order to anoint a second thing, I'd need to get a Blight unique, like Blight Gloves or Blight Boots, and obviously that would cause further problems with the elemental ailment avoidance. And then picking all the minion stuff here. In the beginning I used Enduring Bond because I was leveling with temporary minions with SOS, and the minion duration is really good. The Summon Phantasms and Raging Spirits have 5% chance to refresh the duration. Really poggers while leveling, but now I don't care anymore because I'm not using Phantasms, I'm not using Raging Spirits, and the Skeletons have a pretty decent base duration of 30 seconds right now. So yeah, don't really need anything there. No, actually they have base duration 20 seconds, but you get 50% increased skill effect duration from Mistress of Sacrifice and Necromancer. So they're 30 seconds, and like you're always going to resummon them before 30 seconds for a specific reason that I'm going to get into after I discuss the tree. Right? We get the minion stuff here, minion stuff there, get some life here. I get Indomitable Army because this makes the minions not take extra damage while bleeding and gives them resistances. Minions, just like players, require elemental resistances in order to not die instantly to elemental damage. They don't get the penalty from killing Kitava, so they start at 0, and some minions even have like a baseline resist of like 20 or 40. I don't know the details, I'd have to look it up, but not all of them start at 0. It does help massively to keep them alive against elemental damage. And then we're pathing down here, grabbing that life because it's just too good to pass out on. And to pass on, not pass out on. And grabbing all the jewel sockets that we can, all the life, all the block, all the stuff. And at some point we were, like here I also get spell block there. Then at some point you have enough spare points to get a cluster jewel setup. Cluster jewels are incredibly powerful for minions because there are some notables that are just really, really good. Now, especially for temporary minions where we spam our skeletons every once in a while, you can also see, because I'm using mage skeletons, I'm using spell echo because this supports their mage skeletons spells, and so they get more cast speed, right? But because I'm using that, it's also the summon skeleton spell itself is supported by spell echo, so I don't only pop out 4 skeletons, but I pop out 8 skeletons in one cast. So what do I want to say with that? Minions created recently have 10% increased attack and cast speed and 30% increased movement speed with Call to the Slaughter. This is a very, very good notable because recently is 4 seconds in Path of Exile, right? So when I cast them for 4 seconds, they have a massive buff, means they can get into position and they can cast their first round of spells really, really fast. And the delay that is me casting them and them getting into position is a little bit slower. They're pretty delayed. They're pretty slow. Again, not the best clear speed build, especially it's really decent in ultimatums. It's decent in situations where you stand still, like blighted maps. The clear is very good, but if you move through a map and you have to resummon the skeletons, the delay between you casting the spell and the skeletons actually starting to hit the enemies is rather big. So this helps a big deal with that. Still feels sluggish, not quite as sluggish as it does without it. And then we have a medium. This you can only roll on medium minion life jewels, Blessed Rebirth. And I would go as far as to say this is core in the build. You need Blessed Rebirth. Why? Because minions created recently cannot be damaged, which also means that they're full life for the first 4 seconds after they're created, because they cannot be damaged for 4 seconds after they're created. And that means that Renewal, which gives 5% chance to deal double damage while they're on full life, is up most of the time. And also lets them regenerate 1%, so I actually think I might be able to drop these gloves quite easily. I forgot I have 1% regen here. But eventually we're gonna fill out this cluster jewel region with other stuff. I haven't really made a lot of thoughts about it. Probably just gonna pop in like 2 small life ones with Fettle and try to get to 6-7k. Yeah. Maybe quickly show you the jewels that I run, then you get an idea. So we got, this here is like the best jewel I found all league. This has life, mana, and tri-res, so almost as good as it gets. It could be a double res instead of a single res, then it would be more value overall, but this is an epically good jewel. Needs some work on the implicit because reduced reflected physical damage taken doesn't do anything for my build. Then we got you cannot be maimed in here with all res, which I need to be weakness capped. Like I like to be weakness capped, which you need to be at 104. If you're 75 capped, then you need 104 in order to still have 75 when you reduce by 29%, which is the strength of elemental weakness in white and yellow maps. And in red maps, elemental weakness will reduce your resists by 34%, so you need 109%, so I wouldn't be fully capped on fire and cold, but I would be fully capped on lightning, even if cursed with elemental weakness in a red map. That's just a hardcore thing, you don't care about that in softcore, but it's really nice that when your curse immune flask runs out, that you're not all of a sudden a sitting duck that takes twice the elemental damage that it's supposed to take, right? That would be unfortunate. I'm using Dead Reckoning. This is the jewel that allows you to summon skeletal mages instead of skeletal warriors. I also managed to get the 0.1% life regen on here, so really pog. We get like 5 flat life regen from this. Amazing. Nah, I mean, I'm gonna probably try and double corrupt a Dead Reckoning in the temple to see whether I can get CB and hinder immunity or something like that. But for now we get our Corrupted Blood immunity from this jewel, which also has life. Really nice. Corrupted Blood immunity is not really that needed on a summoner because I get bone armor from the Ascendancy, which makes me immune to bleeding, and I just realized that that doesn't work for Corrupted Blood anymore. So you still need a Corrupted Blood remove on Flask, because bleeding and Corrupted Blood are different things now. But yeah, you do want Corrupted Blood immunity, but it's not quite as important as on a build where you hit enemies rapidly yourself, where Corrupted Blood rares would be an actual threat. Like right now, Corrupted Blood immunity for me only means that I can run the Razor Blade ultimatums that apply Corrupted Blood, and that I can run Cirrus without like dying to CB, right? It's quality of life, but it's not needed in the build at all, not as much as in other builds anyway. And I got this one with cast speed and double res, because like I said, my res are a little bit of a pickle right now. And then this one is actually interesting. I found an Anatomical Knowledge. This is a unique jewel that's not super rare, but fairly rare, and it gives you a lot of life. As you can see, this in this position, it gives me 30 flat life and 8% increased, which is, yeah, really, really good, right? It's based on intelligence in the radius allocated, right? So the fact that I path out of the Witch here instead of through the spell damage or cast speed, which you would do in a normal build, or even here the minion damage, this gives me more flat life from the Anatomical Knowledge. This is a really good position for it. There are better ones, I think up here is better depending on the pathing, but we're not up there, so not really a thing. Yeah, that sums it up for the passive tree. Quickly going over the Ascendancy. My first pick is Mindless Aggression, because while leveling movement speed, attack speed, and damage are just really helpful and are something that is somewhat short in supply. And then I usually rush Unnatural Strength, because +2 minion skill gems is a massive boost, and this is basically the heart of the Ascendancy. This is really good because most minions' survivability scales up with their level, and their damage also scales up. This allows you to get 3 Spectres earlier, right? I don't know what the level is where you get the second Spectre from the gem. We get the second from the gem, we get the third from Death Attunement, but I know that at level 26, Raise Spectre, which we would reach if we had a 21 gem, and we had a +3 socketed minion gems helmet, then we'd have 26, and then we'd get another Spectre. So that's why I'm saying I might refund out of Death Attunement, because I don't need 4 Spectres, right? I only need 3. I don't even need 3, but it's nice to have 3, which I'm gonna go over in a second. But yeah, that's just optional at that point. And then we went for Bone Barrier. No, wait, Bone Barrier was my Uber Lab. This gives a lot of survivability, gives you fist damage reduction per minion that is up, life recovery, which scales all your recovery, it scales your regain on block, scales your regen, scales your flask recovery, every recovery. And it gives you the bone armor, which is basically like a better version of Steel Skin that also affects your minions and makes you bleed immune, and is directly at level 20, like directly gets the same value as a Steel Skin level 20 with 2209 damage absorption. And no, it's level 26, I looked it up. I'm not gonna talk bullshit on my video. What else did I want to say? Yeah, for Merciless Lab, I took Mistress of Sacrifice. Mistress of Sacrifice makes your offering skills affect you, which allows you to get massive block from Bone Offering and life recovery on block. Now, you only get 50% of the offering effect on yourself, right? So I don't get quite as much block from it. But as you can see, if I spam my skills, I'm at 56, 48 block. Together with Roomies, I'm at 75, for 57 because I cap out at 75, I'd be at 76. Tempest Shield and everything considered, my Rainbow Pride Rumi's Concoction that I get from a Val Reliquary Key. You don't need the Rainbow version, right? This is not Legacy or anything, this doesn't have higher values. Regular Rumis is fine. And that just allows me to cap myself for attack block. And that's really nice because with the Bone Offering, we get like something close to 300 life gain on block. And then we get another 5 from this and 28, like another 5% of life and 28. So altogether, I think I get like 600 life whenever I block a hit. And obviously, unless I get one shot, like if you get bursted down, that helps so much with survivability. And yeah, that's basically the Ascendancy. We went over the gear, went over the tree. If there's anything left that I want to say, then that's what Spectres am I using. You can't see my monkeys. I don't know what happens. In my hideout, my monkeys always disappear. But if I go to the Aspirants Plaza, you can see that I'm using a Stygian Silverback and a Host Chieftain, which are the two monkey types or ape types from the Riverways. The Host Chieftain is the one that has the Parasite on the back, and the Stygian Silverback is here the chill one, the one with red and everything that looks fairly natural still. And the Host Chieftain is the one that looks fucked because it has the Parasite on the back and is diseased and whatever. But this one summons power charges for the allies, and this one summons frenzy charges for the allies. So this basically buffs my entire minion army and myself with charges. Charges are massively more powerful on minions than they are on players. Look it up. I'm not gonna digress again. There's too many side alleys, but I'm gonna make a video on that in the future. That's definitely one of the videos that I've planned. And I got my third Spectre is an Ancient Wraith. That's the little metal-looking guy here with the long hair. Here, if you can get a close-up of him. Here, this dude. And this is an Ancient Wraith from Delve. From the Haunted Remains is the type of node that you can get these from. Quickly gonna show you on the Delve minimap. But what that Spectre does is he curses Enfeeble. They also use Ethereal Nice, but obviously the damage doesn't matter in a build that doesn't focus on scattering the damage. But important is they don't only cause curse Enfeeble. There's two variants of them. One of them curses Enfeeble, the other one curses Temporal Chains, but they both ignore the curse limit. So this allows me to have 2 curses on my enemy without getting +1 additional curse from the tree. So that's very, very powerful, and I would recommend that even in builds that, like even in Necromancer builds that don't use summons, this could be a really, really good option just to get some defensive benefits and to make enemies slower and less powerful. Right, that basically sums it up. Flask Setup, Quartz Flask for phasing, right? You can walk through enemies and you get dodge. You know the deal, everyone uses a Quartz Flask, game is unplayable without phasing. Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline, so we can zoom fast and reposition. Using Basalt Flask for the percentage physical reduction, because this actually works against big hits, unlike a Granite Flask, and we already got a Granite Flask, which is Rumi's, which gives us a large amount of block. And yeah, Instant Life Flask for bleed immune and for topping ourselves off in pressure situations when we take a big hit here or there. I didn't go over my rings, but they're quite frankly just filler unset rings for the socket, for life, and resists. And I got my Flame Dash and my Flamewall socketed in there. I guess the Flamewall I could quickly explain. Flamewall is a skill that puts down a Flamewall, and whenever your or allies' projectiles fly through them, it adds fire damage to those projectiles. So it also works for the spell projectiles from the skeletal mages, which gives them quite a bit of buff. Well, that was a lot of information to take in. I'm sorry for talking so fast. I didn't want to make a video longer than 20 minutes. I'm sure it's longer than 20 minutes. But that's basically, I unloaded all my knowledge, right, that I have about this build. Maybe quickly mention that I'm running Zealotry, which grants more spell damage, and I'm running Flesh and Stone and Sand Stance for taking less damage from enemies which are not nearby and blinding nearby enemies. Eventually I may drop this. If I choose to pick Unwavering Stance, then I cannot evade enemy attacks anymore. then Flesh and Stone and Sand Stance would be kind of useless. I'm currently thinking about what to do. I could also run Generosity on Zealotry, because I don't need the more spell damage buff for myself, I only need it for the allies, so Generosity would make the buff on the allies even stronger. And since the Skeleton Mages, which deal spell damage, are my main damage output, this is probably the best aura I can buff them with. Outside of, you know, maybe Wrath for flat fire damage to spells. Not sure about that. Anyway, it's a complicated build. I'm gonna link the POB of the current state at level 92 down below. Again, keep in mind, this is not a build guide, this is not a recommendation to, you have to play this build like this, it's insane, this is the best version of Skeleton Mages. No, this is just my interpretation and what I was able to pull off so far with a very limited playtime. And yeah, I played this character in 4 days, and how much to playtime do I have? 2 days, 5 hours, but a lot of AFK time. So very, very limited amount of playtime, and this is what I was able to pull off so far. I could go over the gem links, but I think I explained what abilities I'm using. If you're interested in the gem links, check the POB. If you have any questions about the gem links, if you're like, but why using this and not this, then, you know, visit me on my stream at twitch.tv/catmasterop or use the comment box down below. Thank you to everyone renewing their subscriptions on my live stream. Thank you to everyone who comes to check out the live stream. A very special thank you to my Patreon supporters, and I'll see you in the next video. Holy shit, this was a lot. I just alt-tabbed and it crashed. Oh, I'm gonna be super mad if my entire PC crashed. Dude. Yeah, and this is where, unfortunately, my computer crashed that was recording, and for some reason, at least partially it crashed. I don't know whether it had to do with PoE or whatever, but I wasn't able to recover the sound recording, which is why I have to apologize for the overly loud music during the 30-minute video. But one quick correction, I already had text on the screen during that wrong statement when I initially said it during the video. Race Spectre only needs a level 25 to give you 3 Spectres from the gem. I was able to hit level 21 on a Corruption, and that means for the time being I completely gave up Death Attunement, because Death Attunement is nice, but it's a 7-point investment from here. And that just for 1 additional skeleton without really having a need for an additional Spectre or the generic damage, leech, and minion life stats or the intelligence, I don't think is worth it. Later on we can pick up Death Attunement again by anointing it onto an amulet, and then we can pick up Ravenous Horde via a Thread of Hope from this jewel socket, I believe medium radius, I don't know for sure though. I'd have to look into it. But that's what I've been told people are doing for Ravenous Horde and Death Attunement. And yeah, I invested the points that were invested here now into a cluster jewel with Fettle. Got some life there, got into the Marauder start, Heart of the Warrior, and total 6,205 life. I swapped in these gloves instead of the previous gloves that I had, and I was able to replace the lightning resist craft with a lightning and chaos resist craft here. So our chaos resist is now at -2%. Also, I did actually end up calculating the damage in POB for you guys. So this is the build in its current state. And for clear, as you can see, we're using Pierce and LMP. Alright, so go clear, skeletons, skeleton caster. We're using the fire projectile. Another important thing to note is I did put elemental equilibrium into the build now. So enemies you hit with elemental damage get plus 25% resistance to those elements and -50 to other elements. there are 3 different elements that the Summon Skeleton mages can do. There's fire, cold, and lightning. And I looked at the damage, and the cold damage seemed to be the weakest all around. So I thought that would be a great idea to have some flat cold damage, and I managed to craft this ring with flat cold damage to attacks. So every time I Vigilant Strike now, I will debuff enemies' fire and lightning resistance. And yeah, if I don't get to melee, I still have Tempest Shield running, which will at least debuff their cold and their fire resist, and give them a slight buff to their lightning resist. This is something I can't really prevent unless I choose to not run Tempest Shield, or I make it so that I can't deal damage at all by getting Ancestral Bond, in which case I also couldn't apply Equilibrium. But yeah, that is why my damage is now pretty decent. And that's for clear. We got, with LMP and Pierce, 106,000 DPS per minion, although for clear I should switch off Equilibrium. So it's 60,000 per skeleton, so it's yeah, 600,000 between the 10 skeletons, which is more than enough to clear red maps, and it will still get better. And then for the bossing, oh wait, normal monsters are not Cirrus, so it would be 134 per monster, right? But for Cirrus bossing, hit by cold damage, and then we're using the bossing setup where we switch in slower projectiles and controlled destruction. This is a different color, so you need a white socket here, or you need to recolor the chest piece. But controlled destruction and slower proj over Pierce and LMP for single target. And as you can see, this is 170,000 DPS per minion. And we got 10 skeletons, so it's about 1.7 million Cirrus DPS currently. And again, this is on pretty shabby gear. Everything available here, you can look at it. And yeah, pretty decent. Instead of using Elemental Equilibrium in order to buff the minion's damage by reducing monster elemental resistances, we could also use the unique Necromancer Silk's Flesh Crafter, which allows minions to ignore monster elemental resistances with their hits as long as they have Energy Shield. Now, because my minions spawn with Energy Shield and they cannot be damaged for 4 seconds when they're spawned, this would be up most of the time. But I don't really like the fact that this doesn't come with any life, and I currently need the ailment avoidance as well as the resistances in order to meet my goals in the build. So this is not an option for me, but if you're playing in softcore, obviously this is a very good way to boost the overall damage, because it allows you to completely ignore resistances. You cannot get resistances to below 0 with this, obviously. They're treated as if they were 0, but you don't need to invest anything but wearing this chest piece, so very good. And another unique that I would like to have in this build that I currently can't have is the Jinxed Juju, which is a unique Citron Amulet. I dropped this one actually already corrupted with 10% increased movement speed on the corrupt, which would be very nice quality of life. And what this does, basically, it makes 10% of damage from hits taken from your Spectre's life before you. You meaning whenever you take damage, whether that's to your life, to your energy shield, or even if you have Might over Matter or whatever, before it's taken from you, 10% of that damage goes to your Spectre's life, which makes it so that basically your life is 10% bigger than it is. Well, actually 1/9 bigger, right? Because you could still take 1/9 of your life as damage from your Spectres. But sadly, I don't have enough dexterity for this. I need the dexterity, and this amulet also gives me an additional skeleton. Plus, this is corrupted, so I would need a tainted oil in order to apply and anoint. So that's very far in the future, if even. But yeah, it would be definitely worth as a survivability boost. So those are the things that I still wanted to say. I shall export this code, share it with Pastebin, and put it in the comments as well as the description down below. Thanks again everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.